welcome to this video that's probably very overdue on my channel. If you guys have followed me for a while, or you could just take one glance at my channel, you know that I am a huge comic book fan. I love both Marvel and DC, but I guess I lean a little bit more toward Marvel. Obviously, I love the MCU. I'm a huge MCU fan. You know, it's not without its flaws like every other movie franchise out there, but the MCU really is one of the best movie franchises in history, in my opinion. So I think it's about time that we do a tier list of the MCU movies. I know this is kind of old, the tier list trend is old, and there's a billion other tier list Marvel MCU videos out there, but I just decided I would do one. This is a Marvel movies tier list, so that means that only MCU movies, no movies that were not made by Marvel, including like Sony's Spider-Man movies or the Fox X-Men movies. None of those. This is strictly MCU and only MCU movies. So things like WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier are not going to be on here, or things like Daredevil and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is like, those are kind of up in the air anyway as if they're canon or not. Some people really want to consider those canon. Other people, you know, really think they're not canon. Maybe that's another discussion video for another day. I just kind of gave myself another idea. What really is canon in the MCU? Yeah, we're going to be sticking with the 23 main Marvel movies up till this point. We're just going to go in order here from what this list has provided me. Keep in mind that this is my opinion. Please don't flame me in the comments. I'm going to try and explain why I have the rankings that I do, but keep in mind that my opinion might change. You know, maybe after I do this list, as I'm sitting in bed tonight, I'm going to be like, man, freaking, I should have given this film an A. I should have given this film a C or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, my opinion does fluctuate when it comes to all films, not just MCU films. So let's get started here. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I really do enjoy, truthfully. I think it's a very fun movie. I really like the dynamic between, you know, the Guardians and introducing new characters like Mantis, and I also really like Ego, who is a pretty kind of obscure and hilarious character from the comics. In the comics, he is not Star-Lord's father, by the way, but I didn't mind them making that change. I think, you know, I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a fun time. I'm gonna give it a B. Let me just get this out of the way too. I pretty much like all Marvel films, so it's pretty safe to assume that the D column is going to be pretty clear. I could be very hard on these films and really try to rank them and maybe only put one in S tier, but I'm not going to do that, you know, because I'm just going to go with how I feel about these movies on an individual basis. So, alright, Spider-Man Far From Home. I like Spider-Man Far From Home, I really do, but I don't necessarily think it's the best Spider-Man movie. I understand what Marvel was trying to do. They were trying to really change the Spider-Man character and make him new and fresh because of, you know, I mean, this was the third reboot in 10 years, which that's like huge. So I understand why they made all these changes. Those changes have kind of created almost a backlash among certain fans lately. I'm not one of those people either, because apparently there's also a lot of legal complications between Sony and Marvel to what they can and can't use. So like something like MJ, they have to call her Michelle Jones because they legally can't say Mary Jane. Again, I don't know if that's true. But the point is, I feel like because they tried to be so different, they kind of got away from what made Spider-Man in a sense. That being said, I do like the movie though, so I'm gonna put it at a B. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, is a fun time, but I do believe that it is definitely on the lower tier of Marvel movies. I saw it twice in the theaters and I do like it, but I didn't really know what it is about it that didn't gel with me until recently. First of all, someone pointed out to me that all the best scenes in that movie were spoiled in the trailers. Every single one of the best scenes in that movie were spoiled in the trailer. Every single one. Maybe that inhibited my enjoyment of the movie. Also, I'm not a huge fan with what they did with Scott Lang in Ant-Man and the Wasp. In the first Ant-Man, Scott Lang was actually like a really smart guy. Like, remember that scene where he broke into Hank Pym's estate and he did that whole like science experiment on the frickin' on the vault to make the door explode, and he did that chemical reaction. He even says in that movie that he has a master's in electrical engineering. So he's clearly a smart guy. Like, he's goofy, but he's a smart guy. But in Ant-Man and the Wasp, they kind of made him, you know, kind of like an idiot. You know, and that it seemed like they really tried to dumb down Scott in order to make Hope, you know, the Wasp, more like, you know, badass and smart. But it's like, I don't think you have to dumb one character down to make the other one more impactful or smart or charismatic or interesting. I think there could be a balance there, and I feel like they kind of failed with that with Ant-Man and the Wasp. That being said, there are some creative action set pieces. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. But that being said, it is lower tier for me, so I'm gonna give Ant-Man and the Wasp a C. Now, that's weird. Okay, so we're gonna go with Ant-Man. I really love Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man. You can definitely see Edgar Wright's influence all over it. It's clever, it's witty, it's funny. I still laugh at it. I always loved Ant-Man. I never thought he was like goofy. I think we're finally past the whole Ant-Man is goofy thing. Like, I really hope in Quantumania they don't keep kind of like beating that dead horse of Ant-Man, he shrinks. It's like we're past that now. We've accepted it. If we can accept a talking raccoon, we can accept an Ant-Man at this point. Let's stop talking about him like he's goofy. He's actually not goofy. He's pretty badass. You know what I'm saying? That being said, the first Ant-Man is really fun, and I'm gonna give the first Ant-Man an A. Okay, so Avengers Age of Ultron, I think, is the weakest Avengers movie. There are some aspects of that story that I'm not the biggest fan of, and this might be a controversial opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of Ultron's characterization. I like James Spader as Ultron, and I love his voice as Ultron, but I think like having him like kind of be quippy and make jokes, I think really kind of took away from his character, especially because in the comics he is like this really, really menacing character, like super menacing. Like when Ultron appears, it's like, oh shit. And you know, they did some changes, like Hank Pym doesn't create Ultron. That doesn't really bother me. But there's just a lot stuffed in to Age of Ultron. Some of it which I do like. I love the introduction of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. I'm not a big fan of what they did to Quicksilver. Spoiler alert, they kill him in a way that makes no sense. It seemed like it was just a response to Fox, who also had their own Quicksilver at the time. They're like, well, we don't want to confuse people by having two Quicksilvers, so we got to kill him off. There are multiple, even though this guy's power is super speed, he can't outrun bullets. That makes no sense, especially because there's a scene earlier on in the film when freaking a bullet comes through the floor, being like he's like in super speed looking at it, and the bullet's really slow. So it doesn't really make much sense, but I do like that. I love the Vision. The battle at the end is really cool. There are some great moments in that. Again, it's just the weakest Avengers film in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, I would imagine, but I would nowhere near call it a bad film at all. The cinematography is upgraded way more than in the first Avengers. There's some great moments in it. I'm gonna give Avengers Age of Ultron a B. Avengers Infinity War. I mean, come on, dude. It's Infinity War. They said that they stopped with they stopped with the Infinity War Part 1, Part 2 thing because they felt that they were two different movies completely. I still disagree with that. I think Endgame and Infinity War are definitely companion pieces. They very much are a Part 1 and a Part 2. The thing with Part 1s is that they're typically boring and they leave on cliffhangers, but it's usually like kind of this long drawn out film. I mean, think Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, which is a good movie, but it is very slow and meandering. Not this film. Infinity War hits the ground running with some of the best characterization, some of the best special effects, best action scenes, best dialogue of the MCU. It's amazing. It truly is a comic book come to life. To adapt the Infinity Gauntlet / Infinity War storyline from the comic books is a daunting task. And this was the start of, you know, their final flagship film, kind of. This was the Part 1 of that film, so I have to give it an S, dude. The ending of that film alone is like amazing. And one thing I've heard people say is that the thing that takes away the stakes of Infinity War is the fact that they announced these films and stuff like that. So we knew that Spider-Man was going to get his own film because it was announced before he died in Infinity War. But the thing is, I remember, I think it was Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, I could be getting those mixed up, the writers of Infinity War and Endgame, they said something that really hit me when I also thought that. They said, look, our goal is to create the same experience that we got in the theaters when we were kids and we saw Empire Strikes Back for the first time. 8-year-olds don't read Variety. 8-year-olds don't read The Hollywood Reporter. So we're trying to create those same cinematic experiences. And I'm like, holy crap, you're right. That's so true. So it's like, as adults, we're letting that ruin our experience of it because we're sort of in the know. And that's the problem with having all this information about, and these insider leaks and all that about movies and even the studios who release all this stuff. I feel like they should keep some of that to themselves to create some of that enjoyment. But that has nothing to do with the quality of the film, obviously. Amazing, amazing film. So good. And that's why it belongs in S tier. Black Panther is a really enjoyable film. I really like it. I'm not as huge on it as other people are. It's a revolutionary film in some regards, and I agree with that. I think it's a great film. But there are some kind of weak special effects, and some of the story is a little bit paint by numbers, but I love the characterization, the emotion, the seriousness of that film. It's a very serious film, and that's what I really liked about it. I really like the character of Black Panther. I'm a huge fan of the Wakandans and like the Wakanda storylines from the comics, and they really captured that in the film. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put Black Panther at an A. It's a good one. Captain America Civil War, I think, is one of the best comic book movies of all time. I absolutely love that film, and I still think about that film and how impressive it is how they were able to balance so much in that film. Not just with the, you know, the adaptation of the Civil War comic into this film, but, you know, the Sokovia Accords and introducing Baron Zemo and introducing Black Panther and Spider-Man. The film had a very daunting task ahead of it by trying to introduce us to a new Spider-Man and a new character in Black Panther. And to have it be a Captain America sequel above those things was very difficult, and it did not get lost in the shuffle. It was still a Captain America sequel, and it feels like it. And I don't know how they did it. I still think about it sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much they were able to pull off in that film. Zemo in this film is an amazing villain. One of the only Avengers superheroes to really succeed in his mission, and he's just a guy. And that's what makes, or at least in this film, he was just a guy. They sort of did a small retcon in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, kind of. But point is, he was just a guy, and that's what is amazing. Of course, I'm putting Civil War at S tier. Come on. Captain America: The First Avenger is amazing. Joe Johnston is a great director. He directed The Rocketeer and The Wolfman and Jurassic Park 3. I know that might not sound like a great resume except for The Rocketeer, but trust me, Joe Johnston has a knack for visuals, and one thing he really loves is the 1940s pulp serial World War II aesthetic, and he nails it. He was the perfect director for Captain America: The First Avenger. He nails the tone of the 1940s pulp serial kind of aesthetic for Captain America. Great film. Steve Rogers is an amazing character, and his introduction in this film is so good. So good. I love the action. Oh my gosh, this film I feel like is one of the most underrated films. I don't think it's S tier per se, but of course I'm giving Captain America: The First Avenger A tier. Alright, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is the first Marvel film directed by the Russo brothers. They took Captain America in a very different direction, to where he was almost ostracized from his previous beliefs, and he was sort of, you know, disconnected from what America was back in the day to what it is now, and he was kind of brought into the age of, he has like this traditionalist view of what America should be and what freedom is, compared to this modern view of what, you know, freedom is to us right now. And I think it had some really cool political commentary. The Russos and Marcus and McFeely have said that this is very much a political thriller, and it very, very much is. The introduction of the Winter Soldier, or the reintroduction of Bucky technically, is amazing. The Winter Soldier is a great villain in this film. Robert Redford is great, and the dynamic between Black Widow and Nick Fury and Maria Hill and Captain America is fantastic. The action in this film, by the way, is some of the best and most grounded in the MCU, surpassed only maybe by Civil War. I loved it. It's so good. Boom. S tier, of course. Of course. Captain Marvel is definitely, again, one of the weaker kind of films in my opinion. I think the problem, I mean, you can watch my review on it on this channel where I dive deeper into it. But I feel like the problem was, it boils down to the character of Captain Marvel. I didn't really understand, I didn't really get a sense of who she was as a character, or like her personality. She didn't have a lot of, I don't want to say charisma, because not every character needs charisma to be interesting, but for her, I just felt like she was very flat, you know? And a lot of that I felt like stemmed from Brie Larson's performance. I'm not one of those people who hates on Brie Larson to hate on her. I think she's an amazing actress. She's an Oscar-winning actress, for crying out loud, you know? But I do feel like the film also kind of takes away from previous MCU films by having these stupid reveals like what happened to Nick Fury with his eye. That was kind of stupid. It also had huge missed opportunities to sort of redeem certain characters like Ronan and Korath from Guardians, who are actually kind of underdeveloped in those movies, and maybe develop them more in this film, and they missed out on that opportunity. I like some of the dynamic between Carol Danvers and Nick Fury, but overall I feel like she was also a little overpowered to where there was really no stakes, and she didn't have a lot of villains that could really match her. Like, she was just wrecking shop, and I feel like there wasn't a lot of conflict in that movie. Overall though, there are some good aspects about it. I think some of the cinematography is great. And again, I like the dynamic between Samuel L. Jackson and Brie Larson, and I like the 90s setting. That being said, however, I don't think it's a bad movie, but to me, it is average. Same thing with Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, boop, it's gonna go in the same spot. Average to maybe slightly above. I think Ant-Man and the Wasp is maybe slightly above average. Captain Marvel's a little bit more average, maybe slightly above, but yeah, whatever. Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is an interesting film for me because I really do like that movie, but for some reason, I always forget about it. I don't know why. It's just like, it's a film that sort of just escapes my brain. And it's not even that it's a forgettable film, because there are forgettable films out there, but for some reason I feel like, it just doesn't stick in my brain. Maybe it's because there's a lot of very similar storylines of the redemption arc and the redemptive hero arc that we already saw, Tony Stark and Thor go through. But, that whole redemption arc is part of Doctor Strange's story. Like, that is his story, so you can't avoid that. And I think visually, Doctor Strange is one of the best Marvel films. I mean, the visual effects sequences in that film, when freaking Doctor Strange is tripping out and stuff, that is some of the most creative visuals I've seen, period, in a movie. Not just in a Marvel film or a superhero film, but just those visuals are insane, you know what I mean? It's like Inception turned up to 11, So it is a good movie though, and I have to acknowledge it. But there's something about it that's a little forgettable to me. So maybe I should put it at a B, but I feel like it belongs in an A. I'm gonna put it at a B for right now. It teeters between B and A for me, but I'm gonna put it at a B because I think it's a great film, but it's just a little forgettable for me, even though the visuals are amazing. Honestly, groundbreaking. It is Steve Ditko's pages come to life, and that is crazy. Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a great introduction of the characters. They're very different than the Guardians of the Galaxy from the comics. Not just the original incarnation with Yondu and Charlie 42 and Mantinex and whatever and all those guys, but even the newer incarnation of, Drax, Gamora, Rocket Raccoon, Groot, and Star-Lord that they portrayed in this movie, even they're very different than the comic books. Star-Lord in the comic books is actually kind of like a dick. He's very strict, or he was. They sort of changed it now to more coincide with the movie. But in the comic books, Star-Lord was not like a Chris Pratt type, and Drax was very different and all that. But they changed the characters enough and made them fresh because they were so obscure that they could get away with a lot of things. And James Gunn did an amazing job with Guardians of the Galaxy. The humor, the action, and the heart is all there, and it's all balanced. It's all balanced super well. There's not a lot of bad things I have to say about Guardians of the Galaxy, I really don't know what's stopping me from putting this in S tier, really. But gosh, I'm trying to think, why is it, I feel like I should put it in A tier, but there's really nothing stopping it from going into S. So yeah, I'm gonna put that in S tier. Great film. The villain is a little weak though. Ronan is a little bit of a weak villain, but overall, great film. Avengers Endgame. Come on, dude. This was the culmination of the MCU as we knew it. This was the finish line that they started since the first Iron Man. To see the Infinity Gauntlet / Infinity War storyline adapted on the big screen was literally something that I would dream of as a kid. When I would read these comic books and when I read parts of the Infinity Gauntlet and the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, and I'd be like, holy crap, how cool would this be to see on the big screen? But we're never gonna get that. If only my child self knew how in frickin', I don't know, 15 years it was going to frickin' happen. If you're a comic book fan, as I was, this is the best age to be alive. Like, this is the best time to be alive. And not only that, but I feel like I'm the best age for a comic book fan because I got to see the transition. I got to see from when you really had to like seek this stuff out and really kind of find in your school like who else is into comics, and there was kind of like this small little groups that were sort of, you know, just like, you know, like the nerds or whatever. Now to see it spread to this worldwide phenomenon and be like, yes, we were one step ahead of the curve. The people who bullied us for liking comic books, guess what? Now they like comic books, and it's insane to see. You know, and that's the type of stuff that Avengers Endgame makes me think about. That movie is borderline flawless. It's borderline flawless. I love that movie, dude. It's so good. It is the culmination of the MCU, and as we've seen with other big budget blockbuster film franchises, Star Wars, sometimes you don't stick the landing, but Marvel did. Marvel did. Avengers Endgame, fantastic. Everything about I love it. The dialogue, the visual effects, the action, it's amazing. S tier, 100%. It's S plus tier, bro. All right, so we got the 3 Iron Man films now in a kind of a weird order. Iron Man 2 is definitely a weaker film for me. I think it's the worst out of the Iron Man films. I definitely like Iron Man 1 better. Iron Man 3, though, is kind of, I don't know. But Iron Man 2, there are some things I like about it. I love the introduction of Don Cheadle as Rhodey. I do think he was the better Rhodey, personally. War Machine was awesome. There were some great moments in that film. Some cool fights. Whiplash was kind of a meh villain. He was alright. There was a lot of kind of like talking over each other in that film, and that's what I remember mostly about that film. Overall, it's a decent film. I'm gonna have to give it a B. It is a fun movie. Like I said, even the ones in C, like none of these are bad films. By any means. You know, none of these are bad films. Even Ant-Man the Wasp and Captain Marvel are not bad films in my opinion. They're just lower on the scale. Iron Man 3 had some really cool moments. I really enjoyed just the Extremis armor, or the was it the Bleeding Edge armor or the Extremis armor? But I know Extremis was in it, but his like new armor, I really enjoyed that. The plane sequence, the action, seeing Tony Stark out of his suit was really cool. I just like the style, the sort of Shane Black-ism of that movie. Has some really good writing for the most part. The thing that I really don't like, though, about Iron Man 3 is its terrible Mandarin twist. But I guess they sort of fixed that now, but the Mandarin was always the Joker to Iron Man. Just like how Batman has Joker and those two are like, that's the arch nemesis. The Mandarin is Iron Man's arch nemesis. He is the arch nemesis, you know? So to just kind of turn him into a joke is kind of dumb. I don't have a problem with Aldrich killing him, but to make him the main villain and to have him be the Mandarin, quote unquote, was a little dumb. But there are a lot of cool aspects of that film. That ending scene when he's like switching between the armors is awesome. The Air Force One scene, like I said, is awesome. Really cool stuff in those films. I have to give Iron Man 3 a B, and so because they really do teeter the line, Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3. You know, I think 3's slightly better than 2, but not enough to make it go into a different tier. Iron Man. Alright, I might get some flack for this, sorta, but Iron Man is amazing. It's the thing that kicked off the MCU. Without Iron Man, we wouldn't have had any of these other films. Iron Man was the thing that kicked off the comic book movie renaissance. Yeah, we would have some comic book movies every now and again, every couple years, you know, some X-Men movies, Spider-Man movies, whatever. But it was Iron Man that kicked it all off. And we have Iron Man to thank for that. My only trepidation with it is just, it almost seems so tame now compared to the rest of the MCU, you know? And even back then, I might get some flack for saying this, I always thought Iron Man was a little overrated. The first one. I always thought it was a little overrated. Just saying. I like it. I really like it. And again, I cannot understate how impactful this was to just the movie industry, especially the comic book movie industry. Like, it is the comic book movie that kicked off everything that we have now. But I can't give it S tier simply because of the status. We're going by the quality of the films and what I think about them. I'm gonna have to give it an A instead of an S. And how crazy is it that, like, it's controversial to say something's an A and not an S? That's just how good Marvel is in general, you know? Obadiah Stane, great villain. Avengers, the first Avengers, is also groundbreaking. It's so cool. It's so freaking cool that to see all these characters come to fruition at that point, at the end of phase 1, I thought, like, this was gonna be it. I'm like, this is the peak. Like, how can you get bigger than this? And then freaking, you know, Marvel showed me, oh, you want to see bigger? We'll show you bigger. But to see the Avengers on screen, the big 4 on screen, or the big 6 even, with Black Widow and Hawkeye, was, I mean, insane. It's I think the Avengers is one of the best comic book movies ever made. My only criticism of that movie is it has kind of strange cinematography. The cinematography is a little weird. But other than that, like, it's a great film. It has amazing writing, amazing direction, acting. I don't like Joss Whedon as a person. However, I'm not gonna knock, you know, his art because of it. The Avengers is amazing. I can separate the art from the artist, you know, most of the time, and in this case I can do it. Like, The Avengers is just one of those films that really also kind of changed the game. It was a turning point where you're like, holy crap, like, they actually did it. What can they do from here? And to see all those characters fight Loki was awesome. I loved the first Avengers, and of course it's going into S tier. Oh, you want to see something controversial? The Incredible Hulk. I think The Incredible Hulk is the most underrated Marvel film. I actually love this movie. It is a perfect Hulk movie. Everything you can ask for. The classic tortured soul, the duality between Hulk and Banner, that's all there. All of Hulk's classic moves, the Hulk smash, the thunderclap, the police car boxing gloves, that's all Hulk-isms that they brought from the material into the movie. It is a perfect Hulk movie. And here's another controversial opinion, but I'm just gonna say it. I love Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, and I'm gonna say it, and I'm gonna die on this hill. I've said this many times. Maybe I've said it in other videos. I still, to this day, think Edward Norton is a better Bruce Banner than Mark Ruffalo. I'm sorry, I just found Edward Norton's character to be more in line to what the Hulk is supposed to be, which is this tortured character. And I understand that you can't do that with every movie, and even at the end of The Incredible Hulk, you can see that Edward Norton's Bruce Banner has, like, kind of taken control over, you know, the Hulk, which they brought into Avengers, like I'm Always Angry, and, you know, going there forward, the relationship between Hulk and Banner was very different, and that's fine. But the Edward Norton version of Bruce Banner was just more in line to what Hulk really, like, just is, you know? And I just felt like he was more of a tortured character. And then when they brought Mark Ruffalo in, I remember when I first saw Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, I couldn't put my finger on what was rubbing me the wrong way. I always said he was just really monotone. Like, there was something about his Bruce Banner I didn't like. And then one day I was listening to a podcast, and one of the hosts in the podcast brought something up, and they were like, here's the thing about Mark Ruffalo, he's just a bad actor. And then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, Mark Ruffalo's not a bad actor. But then I started thinking, and I'm like, holy crap, Mark Ruffalo kind of is a bad actor, at least in my opinion. Like, I started thinking about all of his other roles he's done, and yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of him in terms of, like, his acting ability. I just find him very monotone, and I don't know. There's just something about Mark Ruffalo's acting that rubs me the wrong way, and I just really liked Edward Norton much better. I'm really glad that they brought in aspects of this movie continuing, like Thunderbolt Ross and stuff. This is canon, by the way. Some people, for some reason, say The Incredible Hulk is not canon. Kevin Feige is on record. He did an interview with Rotten Tomatoes where he confirmed, and he said it is canon. We brought back General Ross. We're bringing back Emil Blonsky or whatever. Like, it is canon. It is canon. Just because it's recast does not mean it's not canon, you know? That being said, I really like this film. I think it's highly underrated. It kicked off the MCU with Iron Man. It came out like a month after Iron Man. I'm gonna have to give The Incredible Hulk a freaking A, and I do not care what you have to say about it. I'm sorry, I like the movie. I think it's really good. I think it's so underrated. So underrated. Thor is a great introduction to the character. I remember back in the day in 2011, because Iron Man, Hulk, and Thor were very science-based heroes. They're like, how are we going to bring magic into this MCU, this new thing called the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Like, we can't bring magic into it. And when you rewatch the film, there's a lot of, oh, it's not really magic, it's science. And that's because back in the day, like, this was like a lot of people who were not comic book fans, they were kind of harder to sell this sort of stuff on. Like, you could not make Guardians of the Galaxy in 2008. You could just not do it because people were not ready for that. You know what I mean? I mean, look at the X-Men. They heavily changed and modernized them because people wouldn't be able to take things like the comic accurate suits and the more goofier aspects of the comic books. Now, with the zeitgeist and stuff we have, yeah, absolutely, we could totally take that. But back then, not so much. Thor is amazing. I actually tear up in some of it. I love the love story between Jane Foster and Thor. I love the characters. I also think it has great cinematography. Some of the most beautiful imagery in the MCU. It's almost right up there with Doctor Strange, really. Maybe even surpasses it just because the production design, too, and the costume design is amazing. The look of Asgard is so good. And I love the sort of mythic storytelling that this has. And the fish out of water thing, you could have easily turned that into some cheesy garbage. I think they pulled it off well. Now here's the thing about Thor. I'm not going to dive deep into this part of it. Thor kind of, in a way, belongs in an A. But here's the thing. I actually have a very personal attachment to Thor. A very personal thing with me. I'm not going to divulge into it, but it's a very special film to me for a certain reason that I'm not going to dive deep into. So if I'm judging on the quality, yeah, it would be an A, but I'm putting Thor at S because Thor means something to me on a personal level that not even Endgame can match. And again, it's a very personal thing, so I'm not going to divulge deep into that, but Thor is S tier for me, hands down, just because of what it means to me. And Thor is going to mean something to me for the rest of my life that goes beyond movies. Thor is S tier. And it is that reason also which makes me not really like Thor Ragnarok, which is the next one. Thor Ragnarok, look, I get it. It's funny. It's hilarious. It has great comedic writing by Taika Waititi and some good action sequences. The problem is that because of the reception of Thor the Dark World, which was sort of mixed, they really turned Thor into this 180 character and turned him into like this goofy dude. And I understand they were trying to do something different, but sort of similar to similar to Homecoming. I feel like they really strayed really far away from what they set up, to the point where the Warriors 3, who are these characters that were set up, were just unceremoniously killed for like no reason. And Sif was not even in it without explanation. It almost felt like it wanted to distance itself from the other Thor films so much, and it was almost ashamed to be part of the Thor films. And like I said, I love the first Thor movie. I love it. I think it's one of the best MCU movies, if not the best, because of my personal attachment. To just kind of shit on that, to just be like, oh yeah, like, we're just gonna shit on almost everything that those films were, and turn everything into like a joke. Let's turn the destruction of Asgard into like a joke. It was a bit too much for me. Even something like Guardians of the Galaxy had a balance between seriousness, heart, and comedy, and I felt like the comedy of Thor Ragnarok took away from the seriousness of it. There are serious moments in that film that fall flat because like it's overshadowed by a joke that sometimes happens immediately after. It almost feels like the movie tries to rush the serious parts just to get to the more comedic stuff. That being said, you know, the comedic stuff is funny. And the visuals also in this film are great. There are some amazing visuals. And I understand they wanted to go in a different direction after Thor 2. I feel like I just shit on Thor Ragnarok a lot. Trust me, it is a fun movie. And I know it sounds like I shit on it a lot because I do have my problems with it, but it is fun. There are some gorgeous sequences in that film, and there are just some really kind of cool new characters like the Grandmaster and stuff, and just all these new characters like Valkyrie, bringing her in. There's some cool moments, and it is a very fun movie. And yeah, so I'm gonna have to put Thor Ragnarok at a B, which might seem kind of low, but all right, Thor 2. Thor 2, for me, a lot of people consider this the worst MCU film. I've sort of rewatched it a couple times recently, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's the worst, but it definitely is kind of, it is lower tier. There are some great things about it, some great action, but I feel like it's kind of forgettable. Malekith, I still think to this day, is the worst MCU villain. What was he even trying to do? He wants to bring darkness to the universe. What does that mean? What does that, like literal darkness? Like you want to turn off all the lights? Or do you mean like chaos? Like I don't, like what does that mean? This film also kind of goes against the first Thor film. I can't remember who said this, but someone said the first Thor film is very much fantasy, kind of Lord of the Rings, while like the second Thor film is very gritty, kind of Game of Thronesy. And I definitely see that. They kind of removed some of the polish from the first film, some of the shininess aesthetically, and I wasn't like a huge fan of that. That being said, there are some great moments in it, some good action. The death of Frigga is amazing, and of course, freaking Loki and Thor, their dynamic is great, and Loki is just an amazing character just overall. And I know it sounded like I shit on Thor Ragnarok so much. I don't know why, it just all kind of came out. I haven't like watched some of these films in a while, so I'm trying to like just kind of remember things. Oh yeah, the World War Hulk aspect in Thor Ragnarok was also amazing. The reason I'm backtracking a little bit on Thor Ragnarok is because I'm actually going to put Thor the Dark World at a C. I do like Ragnarok more than the Dark World, but you know, there are some very important things in that movie, like the introduction of a new Infinity Stone, like the Ether and all that. Good movie. Like I said, it's a good movie, just like all the films in C tier, but you know, definitely not in the upper echelon of Marvel films. Okay, last one, Spider-Man Far From Home. I freaking love Spider-Man Far From Home. When I first saw that movie in theaters, it actually kind of blew me away. Has two of the best post-credit scenes, by the way, in any Marvel film. I loved Mysterio. I loved the way he was like portrayed in this movie, and they kind of like brought like, you know, who he was in the comic books, but sort of like with a modern sensibility and like a modern twist to it with like the technology and stuff, because like he was a special effects guy in the comic books, and then they kind of turned it into like this technology thing where he used to be a Stark employee. That was really cool. I think in the comic books he later became like he was actually mystical, but this was definitely harkening back to the earlier kind of Mysterios. It's really cool to see, you know, just Spider-Man almost take that one step closer to be the Spider-Man that we know and love. We see him at the end swinging through Manhattan with MJ. He kind of just becomes that character. You know, he's getting closer and closer to being that character, and that's why I really liked it. The action is directed much better than it was in Homecoming. It's bigger. It does have sequelitis, but not in a bad way. So I probably shouldn't say sequelitis, because that's a bad thing. But it is bigger, it is more expansive, but they pull it off. And I think it's pretty amazing. The only thing I don't like about that movie is there's just one scene, I call it the exposition dump, where Mysterio literally just lays out his entire plan in sort of an unnatural way. That really takes me out of it. But overall, I still really love Spider-Man Far From Home. I love the story, man. Such a good movie. That being said, I'm still just gonna give that an A. It does hover between A and S, but for me, for right now, I'm gonna just give it an A. So yeah, this is my list, guys. Again, this could change. Like, there are things that hover, like Guardians of the Galaxy hovers between A and S, like Far From Home hovers between A and S, and Iron Man 2 kind of hovers between C and B. Also, Doctor Strange, I feel like I should put it in A, man. What's stopping me from putting Doctor Strange in an A? I'm trying to think. Besides the fact that I just sort of forget about it. You know what? Screw it. I'm putting Doctor Strange at an A. Yeah, I'm gonna put it at an A. I can't really justify it not being in an A. I just feel like, I just don't know why I just forget about it sometimes, you know? That's it. I'm locking it in now. This is my final tier list. S. Infinity War, Civil War, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy 1, Avengers Endgame, Avengers, and Thor. A. Ant-Man, Black Panther, The First Avenger, Iron Man, Hulk, Spider-Man Far From Home, and Doctor Strange. B. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Avengers Age of Ultron, Iron Man 3 and 2, and Thor Ragnarok. And then in C, we got Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, and Thor: The Dark World. Yes, that is my list. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with it. Maybe share some of your own lists. What would you do? How would you rank these films? Let me know in the comments. Should I do one about the Marvel television shows? That actually might be a good idea. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe, whatever, do all that stuff. Clever catchphrase. I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Winter's dawning, and I can't seem to adapt. And somebody told me that you felt the same way since we went. Why would you